I was 16 when my mother said the words that changed everything. Don't come home. Your sister doesn't want you there. At first, I thought she was joking, that maybe it was just another dramatic family moment that would pass by morning. But it wasn't. My little sister had always been the favorite, softer voice, better grades, more fragile, more important, and somehow I was always too much, too loud, too emotional, too independent. That night, I stood outside our own house with a suitcase in my hand while the porch light flickered above me. My father didn't even come to the door. He sent a text instead, "Give her space. You'll understand when you're older." I stared at that message for a long time. They called it space, but it felt like exile. I stayed with a friend that week, then another, and eventually I stopped expecting anyone to ask me to come back. The strange part was how easily they erased me. Family pictures were still posted, holiday dinners still happened. My chair just quietly disappeared. Whenever someone asked where I was, my mother would smile and say, "She's doing her own thing," as if I had chosen to leave, as if I had walked away on my own. Years passed, and I built my life quietly. No drama, no announcements, no begging for an invitation back into a house that had once been mine. They never asked how I survived, who helped me, or what it cost to grow up alone. Until one day, an envelope arrived at their house. Cream-colored, gold lettering, my name printed clearly on the front. And underneath, it were the words that would change everything. They had no idea what they were about to walk into. The envelope arrived on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Cream paper, gold lettering, formal and impossible to ignore. My mother later told someone she thought it was a graduation announcement or maybe a job promotion, something small and distant that required polite applause. She had no idea. When she opened it and read, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of," followed by my name, she apparently had to sit down. Not because I was getting married, but because she hadn't even known I was engaged. My sister was the first to call. "How long were you planning to keep this a secret?" she demanded, her voice sharp with accusation. I let the silence stretch before answering calmly. "About 8 years. She didn't like that. You don't just disappear and then send a wedding invite like nothing happened." I almost laughed at the word disappear. "I didn't disappear," I said evenly. "I was told not to come home." The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the weight of a truth they had carefully rewritten for years. That was the first crack in their version of the story. My parents called later that night, both on speaker. I could hear the tension between them. "We think it's time to move forward," my father said cautiously. "Families make mistakes. Mistakes. Like forgetting groceries. Not like locking your child out." I already moved forward. I replied, "That's why you're getting an invitation instead of an explanation." My mother's voice softened into that familiar, controlled tone. "Your sister was going through a difficult time back then." And I wasn't. I asked quietly. No one answered. They shifted to logistics, the venue, the date, who was paying. That last question came disguised as concern. "Weddings are expensive," my father said. "We don't want you struggling." They didn't know about the 3 jobs, the night classes, the years I spent building stability from nothing. They didn't know because they never asked. "Everything is already covered," I said calmly. My mother quickly added, "We'd like to contribute." It sounded generous, but I knew better. In our family, money meant influence, control over the guest list, the narrative, the image. "No," I said gently. "It's handled." Another silence. Another shift. My sister grabbed the phone again. "So, this is your revenge? Invite us so we feel guilty." I leaned back, completely steady. "If I wanted revenge, you wouldn't have gotten an invitation." That's when I heard it, the panic beneath the pride. They weren't upset about missing my life. They were upset they hadn't controlled it. A few days later, my mother asked if my sister could have a special role in the wedding, something symbolic, something visible. I understood immediately it was about rewriting history in public, posing for photos that suggested closeness that never existed. "She'll have a seat," I said, "like everyone else. My father didn't like that. That's your sister. And I'm your daughter," I replied. The conversation ended soon after. Extended family began messaging me privately. "We didn't know. We thought you left by choice." I never defended myself before, but I didn't need to now. The truth had already been mailed in gold lettering. A week before the wedding, they asked to meet at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. When they walked in, they looked older, smaller somehow. My mother reached for my hand. I let her, but I didn't hold on. "We just want things to be normal," she said. "I don't want normal," I answered. "I want honest." My father cleared his throat. "We did what we thought was best for the family." I nodded, and I did what was best for me. That was the real shift, not because they apologized, because they didn't, and not because they suddenly understood, because they didn't, but because they realized I didn't need their version of events anymore. The wedding wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't revenge. It was proof that the girl they told not to come home had built one of her own. As we stood to leave, my sister looked at me and said, "You've changed." I met her eyes calmly. "No," I said, "I just stopped waiting." And in that moment, they still didn't understand something important. The invitation didn't mean they were stepping back into my life. It only meant they were being allowed to witness it. The morning of the wedding was calm, not the nervous, shaky kind of calm, but the steady kind that comes when your hardest battles are already behind you. I wasn't thinking about flowers or music or whether the seating chart was perfect. I was thinking about a porch light flickering over a 16-year-old girl holding a suitcase, rereading a text that told her to give her space. That memory didn't hurt the same anymore. It felt distant, like a chapter from someone else's life. When my parents arrived at the venue, I noticed how uncertain they looked, standing quietly as if they had stepped into a world they didn't fully recognize. Because they had. This life, the friends who became family, the stability I built from scratch, the love waiting for me at the altar, had been created without their help. My sister approached me first, adjusting her dress, her voice softer than I remembered. "You look happy," she said. "I am," I answered honestly, not to prove anything, not to compete, just stating a simple truth. My mother followed with, "We're proud of you," and the words sounded unfamiliar, like something she was still learning how to say. I thanked her politely, without anger and without warmth, just a boundary wrapped in calm. When it was time to walk down the aisle, I didn't glance toward their seats. Not out of resentment, but because my future wasn't sitting back there. It was waiting for me ahead. The ceremony was simple and sincere, built on choice instead of obligation, on partnership instead of permission. And as the vows were spoken and the applause rose around us, I felt something stronger than triumph and quieter than revenge. Peace. They hadn't just lost me years ago when they told me not to come home. They had lost access to the person I became, and access, once quietly revoked, doesn't automatically return.